I'm about to ready to go to bed fairly soon, but I figured that I will end this day with a commentary, and I would say this might be the mother of all commentaries right now because I felt like although I did not like Rush Limbaugh, a big part of my formative years politically just evaporated because of his death. This morning, Rush Limbaugh died at the age of 70. Now, I want to let you know up front that I never wish death on another human being because I'm just not that kind of a person. But I will not mourn over Rush Limbaugh's demise either. And please do not expect me to cry a bucket of tears because I won't. And I mean, this is not even really about Rush Limbaugh being an ideological conservative over policies dealing with taxes, fiscal fiscal issues or fiscal responsibilities, or overly praising capitalism, or desiring a strong defense, or even being socially traditional. Those are political positions. They're fairly benign. You can have an agreement or disagreement. You can actually have civil discourse and disagree with these issues, whatever your take is. And I know conservatives who have views that I pretty much disagree with across the board, but I'm not going to sit there and say they're a terrible person because they disagree with me. I'm not a communist. I know communists that have political views that I disagree with as well, and I don't think that they're individually a terrible person either. I know for some of the conservatives in the audience, I'm not supposed to say that, but individuals are individuals at the end of the day. And when it comes to talking to people, um, whether somebody who thinks that what Hitler did was great, I would never want to associate with them. Or what Pol Pot did in Cambodia, would never want to associate with them. But we're talking about very extreme, vast differences. Okay. But as I said, if you have a point of view that's to my right or to my left, or even if you're within my ideological circle but has some tactical differences, and if such individuals are not an asshole about it, I mean, I'm not going to go and be a jerk about it at all. But the thing about it is, there was nothing good about Rush Limbaugh. Absolutely nothing. He was a partisan hack. He was a smear merchant. He demonized his political opponents. He conjured up conspiracy theories that should be at best laughed at and at worst scorned. Um, and he was all about demonizing the weak and protecting the powerful, which is where I find the biggest fault. You can be a conservative and have and be well-meaning and have good intent over policies. But if somebody's out there to defend the powerful against those who are weak, then I have a problem with such persons. Rush Limbaugh was the embodiment of that. Rush Limbaugh was a corporatist when it came to trade issues. Corporately managed trade is what he was interested in. Anything that will sharply reduce wages and stagnate and depress wages, and if it means closing up factories and sending them to the third world, Rush Limbaugh was in full favor of it. Rush Limbaugh was anti-union, and Rush Limbaugh was always happy when unions became weaker. Healthcare. Rush Limbaugh is opposed to universal health care of any sort. And honestly, I don't understand this about conservatives, especially conservatives who are hung up on capitalism. if they were a smart conservative, like maybe conservatives in many European countries, they would never give up their healthcare system because they know what the American nightmare is all about, and they would not want that shit in their country. I mean, because on a human level, healthcare ought to be available for everybody, but it's also bad business not to have universal healthcare. And the thing about it is, if we had universal health care here in this country, and I don't mean Obamacare, I mean if we had at a minimum Medicare for all, like they have in Canada, or the National Health Service, like they have in the UK, which is what I support, it would be great for the free enterprise system. It was actually enhance the free enterprise system in ways that you will actually create non-exploitive economic growth. I have no problem with capitalism if there is non exploitive economic growth that transpires. But when it's economic growth at the expense of the weak, then that is my problem with the so-called free enterprise system. It isn't free at that point. Rush Limbaugh was in favor of eradicating every aspect of the safety net. That means everything from the time of Franklin Roosevelt all the way up to Lyndon Johnson, um, basically the New Deal and Great Society economic consensus. Rush Limbaugh was for eliminating all of that. Rush Limbaugh would have loved nothing better than to see the United States government be reduced to the way it was prior to Franklin Roosevelt in 1932. And I actually think he'll go further than that. I think he would have this country, the governmental institutions evaporated, where it would just pretend and protect the most powerful. If he could do that, in other words, um, Rush Limbaugh seemed to be. While I respect people who are libertarian, I am not a libertarian economist, and I frown on libertarian economics. But Rush Limbaugh was seemingly an anarcho-capitalist in many ways, and I really don't have time for anarcho-capitalism. Um, Rush Limbaugh was a foreign policy neocon. He was the biggest cheerleader for the Iraq War, which, with the United States treatment of Iraq from basically 1990 into the present, one could argue that over 1 million people died. And Rush Limbaugh was a strong supporter of the Iraq War, strong supporter of going into Afghanistan. And Rush Limbaugh wants the United States to invade Iran these days, and he wants the United States to actually invade Venezuela. Rush Limbaugh was a terrible person. Uh, he loved the surveillance state that took place during the Bush Cheney years after ensued of 9/11, when we had the Patriot Act and we started having the U.S. government spy on the entire American population. Rush Limbaugh loved that. He loved people's right to privacy being violated. Yet he claims that he's a free speech guy and believe in the Constitution, whereas uh, the Patriot Act actually undermines our constitutional rights. So and Rush Limbaugh was a big time supporter of torture in Guantanamo Bay. He he loved the idea of torturing these brown people that were over there down in Guantanamo Bay because he's a sadistic bigot. Apartheid during the 1980s, he was always, basically cheerleading the apartheid government of South Africa and took the Reagan line about, leaving South Africa alone because we don't want those communists to take over the country. And he criticized Nelson Mandela for having ties with the communists and being a communist himself. Here's the thing, and Michael Kinsley called this out once on Rush Limbaugh. When Fidel Castro and Muammar Gaddafi and Yasser Arafat were actually doing what they could to help the anti-apartheid movement of South Africa at that time, you think that Nelson Mandela in his jail cell will be like, these people are willing to help me, but this America seems to want people like myself, due to the color of my skin, to be second, third class citizens in a country where everybody should be racially equal. You expect Nelson Mandela to go and praise the United States over this? I'm not even a fan of Fidel Castro, Yasser Arafat, or Muammar Gaddafi. But if I was in Nelson Mandela's shoes, I would have chosen the same path too. It is understandable. So, Rush Limbaugh, of course, Rush Limbaugh, I mean, he's a bigot anyway, or was a bigot. Rush Limbaugh was opposed to free speech. He thought that people ought to be rounded up and arrested for burning the American flag. He was a staunch supporter of the death penalty. When it came to the drug war, he loved the drug war, which makes him a hypocrite, and I'll get into that in a moment. He supported the idea of boot camps and tough measures that were overly brutal. He was a supporter of police brutality too. Yes, he was. As I said, bigot. He was a bigot, and I don't believe in sitting there calling people you disagree with as bigots. But Rush Limbaugh was objectively a bigot. He mocked Jesse Jackson. He didn't just disagree with Jesse Jackson on policies. He mocked him. He made fun of him and acted like that Jesse Jackson was ignorant because he was black. He did the same thing with Al Sharpton with regard to Jim Clyburn, and I'm going to tell you about Jim Clyburn of South Carolina. I personally don't have any use for Congressman Jim Clyburn. I don't have any use for him for these reasons. He played a role, and I'm not going to try to focus too much on the primaries for 2020, the Democratic primaries, but he played a big role in destroying the Bernie Sanders campaign. Bill Clinton actually thanked him at his funeral service for former Congressman John Lewis. He actually thanked Jim Clyburn um, for stopping Bernie Sanders from being the nominee. George W. Bush also praised Jim Clyburn for the same reasons. So absolutely have no respect, and I individually despise Jim Clyburn. He can kiss my ass. um, but Rush Limbaugh was a racist when he basically accused Jim Clyburn of driving Miss Daisy, referring to Nancy Pelosi. It, Rush Limbaugh always hinted about Obama not being born in the United States. He's always talking about Democrat-run cities and Democrat-run states. And when I hear Democrat-run cities and Democrat-run states, especially by vicious partisan hacks by like Rush Limbaugh, I think, okay, saying Democrat-run cities and Democrat-run states, he means basically cities filled with black people. That's basically what he means, and all that. And that argument always astounded me. Oh, the Democrat-run states and Democrat-run cities, they can't do anything right. I've seen a lot of red states, especially down here in the South. They're not exactly doing a wonderful job. You think Mississippi, for example, is a wonderful model for the United States to follow the other 49 states? Give me Detroit, Michigan any freaking day. Um, Let me go on. He was also, well, was he a homophobe to the time he died? He might have probably mellowed on that issue, but back in the day, back in the 80s and the 1990s, probably to about during the George W. Bush years, he was pretty much your typical movement conservative that pretty much felt like he could make fun of those from the LGBTQ community. He showed no compassion for people who were suffering from AIDS back in the days of Reagan and the Bush 1 years. He criticized Bill Clinton for trying to lift the ban on gays in the military. And my problem with Bill Clinton was one, don't ask, don't tell. I mean, that was a cop out. But also another problem was, the thing about it is maybe the late David McReynolds is right. Said maybe what we need to do is give gays and straights an honorable discharge, had a military all together. Now that, I mean, yeah, there's a little nuance to that, but that's a more respectful position than the crap that Rush Limbaugh had to offer, because he did that to appease the religious right. Although I do think he calmed down on that particular issue. I certainly don't think he was. I certainly don't think he was a still great promoter of LGBTQ equality. He was a horrible sexist. I mean, now when it comes to Hillary Clinton, there's nothing to like about Hillary Clinton. I'll tell you that. But I got good reasons to hate Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton agrees more with the late Rush Limbaugh on policies than she would with me. So the fact that he thinks that Hillary Clinton is a socialist is an insult to those who are socialists, those of us who's on the left. And he's talking about a model for feminism, and he kept on saying, "Well, Hillary Clinton is not a model for sexism because she had to rely on her husband influence. A strong woman is someone like Margaret Thatcher and Golda Meir." Which I think is funny that he would actually inadvertently praise Golda Meir. If no matter what any of you think of the Israeli-Palestinian issue in the year 2021, thing about it is that Golda Meir was a socialist. She was the leader of the Labor Party in Israel, and she was a socialist Zionist. So, but Rush Limbaugh wouldn't know that. I mean, he wouldn't know about that history. But let's see, where else can I go? Oh, Rush Limbaugh with the conspiracy theories and all, and the racism and the sexism combined all in one with uh, his rumoring that Michelle Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama, was a transgender woman. That she was, initially a man and turned into a woman. There's nothing wrong if she was a man that became a woman. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is that Rush Limbaugh said it and packaged it in a way to make it sound like it was all terrible. And it's even false, the accusation. And I mean, it is slander. But I mean, public officials, I guess, can slander other public officials. Whether it is what it is. He was, as I said, getting back to the political opponents, he slandered Bill and Hillary Clinton. He slandered them for the wrong reasons. He slandered Barack Obama, claiming that Barack Obama was not from the United States. He slandered John Kerry, and I'm not a fan of John Kerry, but at least John Kerry actually shot back some replies to him. He was angry over this, and I remember this was back in 2006. He was accusing John Kerry. He's full of hate. I mean, like, Rush, you're not exactly showing any love. You're being a snowflake. You're just being a damn snowflake, Rush, right there. You got this butthurt mentality, and you gonna bark about how John Kerry hates you. If John Kerry hates you, Rush, I didn't blame him for it. You attack him, he has a right to attack back. What else can I say? Oh, former Congresswoman Pat Schroeder, he had a special disdain for her too. And then he sits there and makes fun of people like Greta Thunberg, who's actually trying to save the planet, but he thinks that the gun nut, the gun girl, Caleb Bennett, who is alt-right, racist, anti-Semitic, asshole, thinks that she's a babe. I mean, he of course he's then again he defended Marjorie Taylor Greene. What can one say? Of course, that's because he's a partisan hack, and Republicans to Rush Limbaugh always equals good, and the Democrats always equals evil. And he was a hypocrite, a terrible hypocrite. He believed in the drug war, passionately believed in the drug war. But while he believed in the drug war, when he was caught with illegal painkillers, he wanted pity. And I wanted him thrown under jail. I wanted him in jail with the other people, all the people he thought that should be suffering in jail for lesser offenses than illegal painkillers. I wanted Rush Limbaugh to be in there to see how it felt. But because he's rich and powerful, he can get away with it. Oh, when Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act passed, he threatened that he was going to leave the country if the Affordable Care Act passed. He says he's going to go move to Costa Rica. Well, ironically, if he did, he'll be moving to a country whose healthcare system is a little more socialistic than the inadequate Affordable Care Act. They have Medicare for all, single payer healthcare in Costa Rica. So he went to Hawaii on vacation. He faked being sick and went to the hospital. And he said, "You see, America, I had the greatest healthcare treatment around. And this is when you have a free market system, you have a wonderful healthcare." Well, Mr. Rush Limbaugh failed to realize, because he was stupid, that Hawaii's healthcare system was basically Obamacare. Prior to Obamacare, prior to the Affordable Care Act, prior to Romney Care, Massachusetts, in Hawaii, you were required to buy private health insurance in that state. And the thing about it is that Limbaugh didn't know that, and he lied. He didn't move his ass down to Costa Rica. So yeah, it's funny. And here's the thing about him: his relationship with Donald Trump. Believe it or not, in 2015 and 2016, believe it or not, Rush Limbaugh might have been what you would have called initially as a soft, never Trumper. He was going to vote for Trump no matter what if Trump got the nomination, but he leaned more toward Ted Cruz at that time. And it's not really shocking because, as horrible as Donald Trump is, Ted Cruz is still worse, because Ted Cruz is part of that. Ted Cruz politics is a meaner version of the shit that Bush and Cheney were all about. And and so there is ideological differences between someone like Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. Although now Ted Cruz is a newly converted Trump sycophant, trying to win that Trump brand because he's a snake oil salesman who wants to run for president again one day. Um, and that's what he's all about. And I'm going to tell you, I was extremely offended when Donald Trump, in his State of the Union address, offered Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Honor for Freedom. Freedom? Really? Rush Limbaugh? Really? My goodness. This is, I mean, that just took the cake right there when he did that. I mean, just, and they're going to get mad at Nancy Pelosi for ripping up his Trump's speech. I would have been more happy she would have ripped up his military budget, but oh well. But I'm going to say this and say it like it is. Um, as far as a human being is concerned, Rush Limbaugh dying, I'm sorry he's dead. Just as I'm sorry that any of my relatives are dead, or my friends, or my next door neighbor. In other words, if you're a human being, no matter how loathsome you are, if you're gone from this planet, because you are a human being at the end of the day, I'm sorry anybody goes. That's the extent with me. But don't expect me to cry a river for Rush Limbaugh. Don't expect me to say, well, he was a wonderful person. There was nothing wonderful about him. And I got criticized when Jesse Helms died for saying the same thing. There was nothing wonderful about Jesse Helms. In fact, Jesse Helms was one of the worst people that was elected imaginable. I didn't cry a bucket of tears for Jesse Helms. I will not cry a bucket of tears for um, for Rush Limbaugh. Um, I just think he was the most toxic individual on public media and in our media, and unfortunately, he was too influential toward people who follow him like lemmings. Now, I'm a free speech guy. As far as free speech was concerned, he had every right to spew the garbage that he spewed. And trust me, what Rush Limbaugh spewed was absolute, utter garbage. It was diarrhea over the airwaves 3 hours a day. I was on his radio show briefly back in 1997, and it was over the UPS strike. I obviously sided with the Teamsters. He was on the side of UPS, and we, now maybe the one good thing I will say about Rush Limbaugh is that if you were a progressive or you were left wing and you managed to call in on his show, he was actually fairly civil to you, unlike someone like Mark Levin or Michael Savage or someone like that. Who are absolute scumbags, and they're worse than Rush Limbaugh. But the thing about it is that would be the exception to the rule. And I wish that the video was still in existence, but there was also a friend of mine from the Socialist Party USA actually was on the Rush Limbaugh show too in 2010. My old friend Dwight Welch. He called in, and you should have seen how Rush Limbaugh was very frustrated because, you know, Dwight was kicking his ass on the air. I mean, Dwight was polite and provided cogent, intelligent response, and basically just shot him down, shot Rush Limbaugh down one by one, each talking point. And Rush Limbaugh was just squirming, and he knew he was getting defeated in the dialogue, and that put a smile on my face there. But anyway, Rush Limbaugh will not be missed. If you like what you heard, press like and comment. Comment any ways you didn't quite agree. As let me just say that I lost my words for a second. Feel free to share the content on this channel. It's the First Amendment absolutist. It's my duty to inform you, to create a platform and utilize it and express your viewpoint because we're the muckrakers of our time. Um, Feel free to hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. And until next time, I am American Social Democracy. Peace, and let's work together and build a social democratic America. You know, we are years and years behind on that. So let's do it. Peace.